Good afternoon. Welcome, everybody, to 3Squares. We are thrilled you are here. We're dishing on the food industry, and we've got an outstanding program for you today. We're a little bit tardy getting started, but we're kind of leaning into the holiday a little bit. Yes, it's Kevin, but that's okay. We won't make him stay after, well, I don't know. We'll talk about the ruler and how we have to bring out the ruler.
The ruler, yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole nother Catholic school conversation.
You're going to trigger his youthful.
No, move on, Charlie. Move on.
Okay. All right. All right. By the way, I don't think your microphone is working, Kevin. So you have to work on that one. Hey, I am Charlie Arnot. I am CEO of the Center for Food Integrity and Look East, and we are dedicated to keeping food trustworthy. My colleague, Susan Schwallie.
Hi, Susan Schwallie, Heritage NPD, merging with Heritage IRI. I've spent my career studying what consumers eat and drink and what motivates them.
So what's the new name, or is there a new name?
The new name will be announced before CES, so soon.
Oh,
I don't know the new name yet.
Because Erie Nipted doesn't really roll off the tongue.
Erie Nipted is not going to be the name.
One of the options?
No.
Okay.
I don't believe that's an option.
Kevin, you're up.
I am. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Yes.
You sound fabulous.
All right. Kevin Ryan, Malachite Strategy and Research, helping food companies and retailers do front-end strategy.
Excellent. So when we were planning for this today, we talked a little bit about what's on the menu, and the two of you suggested data, which is fascinating to me because both of you kind of live in that world. Susan, it's home for you. You're a native, and Kevin, you're an expert visitor. So I'm going to turn that part over to you, and then we'll jump back into some more meaty conversations in just a little bit.
Yeah. So, well, there's lots of different directions we could go about data, but the one that I've been thinking about for some time, but more recently in particular, is Walmart Luminate. Because within the last month, they have announced a basic package that will be available free of charge to suppliers. But the real story here is the upsell to the full charter package and the fact that they have a revenue stream to the tune of, I'm hearing estimates around $300 million, primarily right now from large CPGs. The intention is general merch as well, but a lot of value being seen by high turn products where you can use the information to, optimize your sales at shelf. And it's fascinating because this isn't new to Walmart, right? Like they pulled their data. Do we all remember in May of 2001 when they pulled I remember where I was. That's how much of a data nerd I am when they pulled that feed. So now they're monetizing it, which isn't a surprise in this era of big data.
Right.
So for those of us who may not be familiar with what this is and how it works, give us a little background.
Well, Walmart is basically selling to suppliers access to their data, retail link data, as well as analytics and a dashboard that allows them to, really understand movement within the store. And what Walmart loves about it, besides it being a data stream, is it's one voice or one truth of the data, right?
Yeah.
So that's it. I think in a nutshell, basically. I know, Kevin, you want to jump in here.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's always interesting that Walmart, especially because Walmart's always been kind of a black box, so to speak, in a lot of the data analytics, because oftentimes they're excluded in some ways from that. So it's like being able to peek behind the curtain and stuff like that for the largest grocery retailer is just fascinating. And you can see how it's really, something that makes complete sense why they're doing it. I think the question is that the utility that you can get out of it, and then as you mentioned, offering different tiers, I think is just fascinating, and I think you're just going to see more of it.
Yeah, and they're not the only ones to do this. Where there's a pay to play. I think it's Cisco that also has, for customers, there's kind of a pay to play and access today. I mean, I remember when I started my career at IRI in the late 90s, the pay to play is you had to buy the RMA and the CRMA for the retailer. And now this is a shift towards, Walmart having that control.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because in a sense, I think they're taking a playbook from the likes of Amazon and other digital media. The idea of, if you want to work within our channel, we will be the source of your information
Yep.
in our channel. And I think that's just interesting that they're leveraging that, which is also very smart. It's no shade against them. It's smart.
No, it is smart. Yep.
So if I'm a supplier, how does it benefit me?
You get access to seeing how your stuff is turning.
Yeah.
And then as you go deeper and deeper in, they can give you more. And they're adding, and Susan's probably much more on top of this than I am, but they're adding more and more of that depth. I mean, Target just announced all of their new stores, their bigger stores, and some of the shoppability aspects they're adding to it. I think as you get further into it, the digital the idea of shopping with your phone, geolocation in store and all that kind of stuff, they're going to be able to give you data of how long you were hovering over a particular aisle and how often your demographic that you're targeting is in a particular aisle. I mean, that's the future.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon Go and Amazon Fresh stores, they also have a store analytics. No, store insights, I think it's not a very pithy name, but because they have cameras everywhere and they know when you're pulling something off a shelf, putting it in the cart, putting it back, because they weigh the cart, right? Like they can tell all of those things to a supplier about their brand. So it is, you have to, first of all, if you want to be category captain and be in the room where the decisions are made and influencing, you have to subscribe. You have to buy this data. And then what it gets you, to Kevin's point, is actionability. Now, what it doesn't get you is rest of market. And that's kind of where the IRIs and the Nielsen's of the, the world we kind of come in. But it is also, Kevin, I was just reading about that larger Target store format, which really is about what they can store in the back end, so that when you do curbside or delivery, they can warehouse it. But now it's also they're going to have a really unique view into what's moving brick and mortar, digital, curbside, which are things that are hard to get, which several of us are doing through receipts. But again, it's that total picture control deep dive within their shopper. That's what it gets you as a supplier.
Right.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And it's interesting to see how COVID and the fundamental reshaping of our shopping behavior has accelerated so much of this over the last couple of years. It's just genius. So as we think about what else is on the menu today, I want to transition over to Upside Food, and that will be kind of a segue into our incredible guest today. Upside Food is the first cellular meat company to get a green light by FDA. Basically, they don't approve it. They just say no further questions, right? But they've gotten the green light to move forward. But it's a fascinating category, and we have brought probably the industry's foremost expert on meat and alternative meat to join us today. So, Lisa, come on screen and you can join us. Lisa Keefe is editor-in-chief of Meatingplace and its sister publication, Alt Meat, dedicated to the business of plant-based and cultivated meat production. She joined the Meatingplace team as editor of the magazine 14 years ago and oversaw an increase in readership and interest in the publication, both within and outside the meat industry. Under her guidance, Meatingplace has brought home 21 national awards, recognizing its exemplary coverage of the industry. Alt Meat, which was launched in 2020, also has earned national recognition for its coverage. Keefe writes the Center of the Plate blog on meatingplace.com, writes for Meatingplace in print, and hosts the Alt Meat podcast, available for listening on all most popular podcast platforms. She earned her bachelor's and master's degree from Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism, which is one of the reasons that Meatingplace far outshines their competitors in terms of quality and content, because it's written by an actual journalist. So, Lisa, welcome.
Can I quote you on that, Charlie?
Absolutely, absolutely. In terms of quality of both editorial and visual, it's head and shoulders above so many others. So, thanks for putting out a good publication. All right, so let's jump in here. Alt meat is kind of the hot topic today, whether it is Upside or others. As I sent you kind of that innovation curve to look at, it was fascinating to see the very beginning of this, which began before COVID, but was accelerated during COVID as consumers were really interested in better for me, better for the planet solutions. Then we saw all these inflated expectations as stock prices soared. Initial sampling was through the roof. And then guess what? It didn't compete on price and taste. And so demand began to decrease and stock prices began to drop. Talking to somebody in the VC community a few weeks ago, and he said, now there are 80 roughly 80 alt meat competitors that are truly legitimate, looking to find a spot in the shrinking retail alt meat case. So we're in that period where we're going to see some consolidation, some failures, but then what will happen next? And my hypothesis is that version 3, version 4 of these products will be more competitive. It's not there today. It's interesting, but the demand, I think, will be there because of that interest in better for me, better for the planet alternatives. So you've been deeply engrossed in this category. What are you seeing now, and what do you see over the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, I think that adoption curve that you shared is right on point, and that right now what the market is seeing is you've gone from this. I think in the years to come, it's going to be fascinating to see what the pandemic effects have been over time on so many markets, but particularly on food and such, because I think we're a long way away from understanding what the long-term implications are. So you did have this very unique and remarkable set of events that came together to boost the market so much during the pandemic, and an awful lot of people got very excited. And now we are really sort of in this trough of disillusionment, as the curve identifies it, in terms of American consumers have very little patience. And so, if you don't appeal to them right away, if you don't start pushing their buttons right away, they're going to walk away very quickly. They don't stick with things very long and give them too many chances. On the other hand, Americans have very short memories. So I think that the companies that are producing these products are continuing to do their research. They are continuing to get better. They are going to come out with better and better priced alternatives into the future. And I think that you will see consumers, a segment of consumers, moving back slowly into that market and becoming regular consumers, and for that going on over a long period of time, which was always going to be the case. And so I'm sorry for all the folks who thought that they were, hitching their little red wagons to, some amazing, super horse that was going to take them off into, it just doesn't work like that. This is the way that markets have worked for a very long time in the industrial age, and here we are in a very predictable curve.
Right.
So, go ahead, Kevin. I'm fascinated because you mentioned on an earlier podcast, Kevin, you said something I thought was very interesting, which happens all the time, of course. But you said that part of the investment and part of the attraction was the opportunity to create a new category, and that happens so rarely. Can you say a little more about that, Kevin?
Yeah, no, it does happen very rarely. It's because of the risk aspect of it. So the idea being about, how much retailers and CPG or other manufacturers are willing to put in to start a new category. You see so many that have tried and failed. And plus, the other thing is, structurally, most of these companies are not set up to start new categories and be able to invest in new categories. So you're just not seeing it. I don't know if Lisa has anything to add to that, or her thoughts. She knows more about this than I do, probably.
And this might have be part of the pandemic effect, is that it sort of is a kind of remarkably grassroots. A number of these products that are garnering a fair number of headlines were literally, the food version of Bill Gates in the garage. These are products that were cooked up in people's kitchens. Now, in our mass consumer society, which long tail or not, we're still pretty mass consumption, that we're going to see the industrialization, those recipes that survive scaling up and can be produced, have a quality product that is produced at very large scale, are what's going to be left over after this period of consolidation. And I'm afraid that a number of these very hopeful mission-driven startups that are very small are probably, their entrepreneurs will cash out. They'll be purchased by bigger companies, and everybody will be happy financially. But this grassroots part of it is going to find that it's going to peter out, I think, over time.
Yeah.
So I kind of play devil's advocate a little bit. So Lisa, sometimes I'm the annoying one.
Oh no, devil's advocates are always welcome.
Sometimes.
That's not nice.
So I always think about, consumers and where they're coming from. So I would argue it's not a new category. It's chicken. It's protein. It's a technology. It's a new process. But to the
Mhm.
consumer, it's another choice and something very familiar. And that's not bad
Hmm.
because adoption of something that's a twist on the familiar is much easier to get the American consumer to do versus something wholly. And I realize I might be playing semantics a little bit here, but I think that's the genius of it, right? If
Mm.
it delivers on taste, it will hit and it'll hit hard, I think.
See, the interesting thing, I think you're exactly right, Susan, and I think that the thing is, there's the consumer perception, and then what has been driving a lot of this excitement is the investor side of it, and they and the entrepreneurs have sort of controlled the conversation much of the time, and they are talking about it as, this is new and this is exciting and this is different. And you're absolutely right. The consumer's like, okay, what's new about this? I tried this vegetable derived alternative meat, and I'm not a vegetarian. I'm not a committed vegan, and I'm just going to go back to my regular, hamburger because it's cheaper and it tastes better. So I think that we're going to see the shift in the who generates that conversation from the investors and the entrepreneurs with this sales pitch, if really, and moving to the consumers who are and have always been the ultimate arbiter of what's going to fly and what isn't.
Yeah.
And I think that in the next 18 to 24 months, we're going to see a lot of shift, a lot of a roiling of the waters in this market. It's, from a journalist point of view, it's fascinating to cover. So,
speaking of the pandemic, you talked about it as it affected alt meat. What about the meat sector in general? Like, how do you think that's going to continue to affect? I mean, we see Tyson investing heavily in robotics and all this stuff. Like, what is the knock-on effects going to be from that?
That, I think, is going to be much slower moving in terms of, but I think that also going to be lasting changes. I think that across the industry, you have a much more heightened awareness of health and wellness, both in the products, but also a lot higher consideration for employee and worker health. And there seems to have been an awful lot of chicanery that happened as the pandemic was moving very quickly through the industry, and there's maybe the industry influenced the executive order and some other things, and I don't know about those things. I think about being the head of a meat company at that time, and you are putting your workers at risk, but on the other hand, if you shut everything down, would the fallout from that have been even worse? And it really was a no-win situation for any business leader in that case. But in terms of the long-term effects, I think that, yes, you were seeing Tyson as being very vocal about it and being very upfront. I'm sure they're not the only ones. The other companies probably are maybe a little more under the radar about it, but a lot of investment in robotics and technologies. And these are not new technologies. They're very much in use in Europe, where the cost of labor has been higher for a very long time. And so it's a matter of importing and setting them up here. And it's only now becoming more cost effective to do that than it is to just hire more people. And I also think that you will see more attention to the products themselves and the quality of the products, and that awareness of sustainability and healthfulness and better for the planet, better for the people kind of messaging. And not just messaging. I think that they are really genuinely re-examining their product lines and things in order to make these improvements on an ongoing basis, but it is incremental.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because the sustainability piece has been a big driver for why a lot of the innovators brought about. And before we got on this live webcast, we were talking about the word mission, and
Yes.
I love for you to share that kind of potentially the role of mission with these companies now and how that's changing?
Are we talking about the alt meat or the meat or both?
Alt meat.
On the alt meat. Well, the the alt meat industry has a good line of discussion in the sustainability and the economic or the ecological avenues, even if some of the numbers are in question in the market. And so they have been and really tapping that emotional connection that brands want to. You want your brand to excite your consumer for reasons other than just price or or a fancy fancy logo or whatever. So so that's great, but for a lot of reasons that's been almost the only consistent part of the messaging that they've really been able to pull off on an ongoing basis. And it does not trump, and no survey has ever shown that consumers care more about planet and healthfulness than they do about price and taste. Price and taste are always the deciding factors. And so what seemed very exciting and new at the very beginning of this market generation in 2018, 2019, I think has started to sound a little hollow to consumers that, okay, this is a mission, but, and I support your mission, but when I'm standing in front of the meat case and I'm trying to decide if I'm going to buy this refrigerated fresh alt product over here, or this less expensive and I know better tasting version of conventional meat over on that side, I'm going to go with the conventional meat. Mm-hmm. It's all about that decision that gets made in the store at the moment. And you can talk about mission till the cows come home, and so to speak, and it's not going to make any difference.
No.
Very cool. All right, one last question. We're running out of time here, but Lisa, interesting decision by FDA this week to give Upside Food the green light, and the first in the cellular sector. What do you see in terms of the differences between plant-based and cultivated cell product in terms of both development and consumer acceptance? What's your perception?
If cultivated meat can, as the cultivated meat producers say they are very close to doing, cracking the code of being able to generate these cell-based products at scale, I think personally it's a game changer. I mean, for everybody, it will be the boulder that you throw into the pond where previously people have simply thrown rocks into the pond. I could be wrong. It's just one person. I have had the chance to test cultivated meat itself, and I was a skeptic before I tried it, and I tried it and I thought, man, if you can figure out how to make this stuff at scale, I'm right there. It will satisfy that part of me that wants to not see the animals slaughtered, and it tastes wonderful. They're not missing anything. There's none of these, off notes that have to be covered up in a plant-based product. But it's a big if. It's a big if. A lot of people, I'm thinking of Ricardo San Martin at Berkeley, who knows this industry better than I do. And he says, people have been trying to figure out how to make this stuff at scale and at a lower cost for generations, and they haven't done it yet, and they're not going to do it. And so if he turns out to be right, then it winds up being a great idea with no reality. But if they can make it a reality, it's going to change everything.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about it from a journalist perspective, but boy, are you in the right place at the right time. There is so much going on in that sector.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. I mean, as always, phenomenal insight. Your coverage is terrific. Your writing is exceptional. And we appreciate you spending a little time with us today.
Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. You're welcome to listen in on the rest of it if you'd like to. It's going to be mostly inane, but it's kind of fun. So.
Oh, I love inanity. It's fun on a Friday.
This is where Kevin plays stuff.
That's where my part is.
Charlie and I.
That's right.
All about inane. I'm all about inane.
All right, Kevin. Looking forward to it.
Thanks.
Thank you again, Lisa. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to
Lisa.
transition to what the food. But before I get there, Susan, Kevin, first of all, are you turkey eaters, and did you get your turkey?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Not so much. Not so much. I'm not a big turkey person.
This would have been
Really?
a deal breaker had I known this before we started this
No,
podcast.
I'll make it, but it's like it's not my favorite. It's not my favorite.
Really?
Yeah, and I've gone out of my way, deep fry, smoke, all that stuff. I've done them all, and they're all like,
Wow.
it's okay.
I'm all about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
and
I love the nostalgia of it more than I
there you
like the
go.
actual
Yeah,
taste
I
of
think
it.
I think that's probably right. I think that's it's quite tasty. You put gravy and
Yeah.
potatoes and dressing around it, and have a couple of glasses of wine, and why not?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
But
So.
it's my favorite holiday. The
Oh,
food.
I love the
It's a great
holiday.
holiday. Yeah, that's a
The
separate question.
food. I'll eat it for days.
Yeah. Because you have
Okay.
to.
Yeah, right.
I
At that
want
point.
to. Fine. All right, Kevin. What are we
all right.
doing here?
What's the
So-
food?
We're going to talk about Thanksgiving. So what I
Yep.
thought is we're going to cut to the chase. Everyone, you like the quizzes, so I just went with the quiz. And
Yes.
we're going to have a quiz.
I'm going
It's
to win
about
it this
Thanksgiving.
time.
And this is,
No.
I'm going to give you a fact, or is it? And you tell me if it's true or false. And then, okay, and it's all about Thanksgiving. Okay.
Okay.
Now, are we going back and forth, or are we jump?
No.
you
I'll
yeah.
state the fact, in air quotes, the fact, and you tell me whether or not it is true
Okay.
or not true.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
The word, number one, the word pecan comes from the Spanish word, a Spanish phrase, picante de nuez, meaning spicy nuts. Probably because early explorers first encountering them had it when it was served by natives. They gave them like nuts mixed with peppers.
False.
I'm going to say it's true, but is it pecan or is it pecan? It depends on which side of the Mason-Dixon line you're on. So
Okay.
that's a whole nother conversation. I'm gonna
It's
say
actually, Susan's right. It's false.
Oh.
It's actually a Algonquin word meaning a nut that requires a stone to crack.
That is so true and
is true.
descriptive.
That
And
is
one
Totally
little
is true.
compact word.
Yes.
Yeah.
And by the way, Charlie, it's pecan. It's not pecan. It's pecan.
It isn't in North Carolina. I can tell you it's pecan in North Carolina.
Well, we won't go into, I had a Southerner tell me why it wasn't pecan, but anyway, we'll go.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. Next one, marshmallows,
Oh.
which are our favorite to top sweet potato casseroles this season, were originally made with an extract from an herb that grew in the marshes along the Nile River.
Well, there is a marshmallow herb. So I'm going to say true.
Charlie?
Well, I've got to be contrary because she said true just to have an opposite opinion. I'm going to say false.
No, it's actually true. The early marshmallows is a gelatinous extract.
getting
from
skunked
from a
here.
root. Yeah.
And you know what? I drank marshmallow tea
Yes,
for
that's
heartburn when I was pregnant.
yes.
Really?
Yeah.
It worked
Was
great.
that effective? It did.
Yeah.
Today's
darn.
marshmallows don't have the herb. They got rid of it and put gelatin in. Speaking of the meat industry.
All I can see is the big Stay Puft guy in Ghostbusters.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Number 3, cranberries are also known as bounce berries because they are one of the only berries that are firm enough to bounce when you drop them.
True.
Susan?
Yeah, I'm going to have to say true. I think that is true.
That is true. Cranberries are traditionally sorted by bouncing them down a series of motorized stairs. The good berries bounce and the bad berries stay on the stairs. So that's how they actually do harvest it.
Oh.
Yeah.
But
That's how they do it.
it's unlike elementary school where the good berries would stay on the stairs and the bad
Right.
berries would bounce.
Yeah.
All right, two more. Okay, number 1, or this one. One of the most important pollinators of pumpkins is the squash bat, a small species of bat that's hardy enough to carry the pumpkin pollen's larger particles.
No. It's a
Susan?
good story, but it's
I've
not
never
true.
heard of a squash bat. No.
Okay, you're right. It's false. However, there is a squash bee that is larger than the typical bee, and it's
Oh.
hardy enough to carry the pollen. There
Where do
really
you
is.
find all this stuff?
Yes.
Yeah. It's not the carpenter bee. That's a really big bee.
No, this is a big bee, and it used to be the squash bee, and now they actually, because that has declined, they've actually gone
Oh.
into a larger bumblebee. But bats are, just to be clear, bats are very big pollinators, but mostly in warmer climates. So,
Oh.
Interesting.
all right, last one. One way to tell whether a turkey is male or female is to check its droppings. A male turkey's poop is shaped like the letter J, and a female's is a spiral.
No, you tell by the thing, the
Charlie?
chin thing.
I'm going to say true, just again to be
and
the
the
contrarian.
tails. and
It
the
is
tail.
true. That is true. Yes, you can tell by the droppings, the different, very different shapes.
No way.
You can find pictures online.
I have I have wild turkeys all over the place.
Are you checking their droppings? You should be.
I should be, but there's snow everywhere now.
People will think you're like a turkey savant. You
I
go out there and
know.
you're like, there was a male turkey here.
Yeah, well,
Right?
yeah. There's our friend Susan, the turkey
Next
savant.
spring, I'm going to be out there chasing them down, looking. You wait.
I
The
did
animal
write
that has the square poo, the wombat.
wombats. Yeah, they have square
Yeah.
poo, so that doesn't. Yeah, that's true. I did have one I wrote, but I knew I couldn't get through it without laughing.
Okay,
You want
so
to hear
say-
that one?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go.
Sweet potatoes were originally called yeet potatoes because they're hardy enough that workers could throw them into the waiting carts. And later people misheard yeet potato and called them sweet potatoes. I couldn't get through that. But I
Yeet?
didn't even know. Yeah, see,
Yeet.
that is a very
Why is that
Susan
funny?
knows. See,
Yeah, I have an 11-year-old who watches YouTube. Everything's yeet.
yeet is
Oh.
to throw in modern
Ah.
parlance. So
Mhm.
yes, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well,
Very
there's
sus that you don't know that, Charlie, because you're
Well,
a
it's not-
cringy boomer.
Things to
yeah,
talk
exactly
about
right.
at the Thanksgiving table. There you go. Things to talk
Yeet.
about Thanksgiving table.
Oh,
Yeet
yeah.
potatoes. I'll bring that up
Thank you
with
for
my
that.
wife's two cousins. Yeah, that'll be very helpful.
You
Excellent.
can
Yeah.
yeet a potato at me. That's what you can tell people.
Hey, all right. Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of 3Squares, whether you did it live or you're listening to the podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, you can send them to 3squaresmail@gmail.com. That's the numeral 3squaresmail@gmail.com. If you have complaints, just call Kevin.
Yeah.
Hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Yeet up. And we'll see you next time on 3Squares.
Nice try, Charlie.
Nice
Hey,
try.
everybody. Bye.
Happy
Bye.
Thanksgiving.
Happy
Bye.
Thanksgiving. Bye.